So let's come back to the next thing. So you do see that we've allocated 20 in that cell. Now, once we've allocated 20, 20 turns out to be the total demand for that point B1, for the demand center B1. And so we cannot do any more allocations in that column. And so we cross out all the cells in that column. So you do see that there's a blue line cancelling A2 and A3 all under B1. So it means that we can no longer make any more allocations in that cell. And again, the demand there is also crossed out. So it means the demand has been exhausted. Demand there now is 0. Now, after crossing out the first column, what we are left with will start from B2 all the way to B4 and then down to A3, B4 and then A3, B2, which has been highlighted. So you see that there's another big cell, the borders or where we have left has been highlighted. Now again, look for the northwest corner cell in the cells that have been left for allocation. And so I have also highlighted the northwest corner cell now in red. Now, if we found our northwest corner cell, the next thing is to make an allocation in that cell. Now, you remember that when we allocated 20 in A1, B1, the first one, A1 still had 20 units left. Now, this time around, B1 requires demand of 30 or requires 30 units. But A1 only has 20 left, so we can only offer 20. So we allocate 20 there. And once we allocate 20, you do see that A1 will no longer have any supplies left. It has exhausted its supply. So then in that case, that entire, the next two cells in row A1, we cannot make any more allocations in that cell because it has exhausted its supply. So once we cross out that one, it means A1 has nothing more. So you see that the first row and the first column are all out. So you will now see that, so what is now left, so this is what I was saying, that point here, exactly, the one in blue now is our new northwest corner cell. We allocate there and then everything goes on. Now you would see that once A1 is out and B1 is out, what we are left with is what is highlighted in green. You get it? So those are the cells left. Now again, for those cells that are left, identify the northwest corner cell and then allocate as much as possible considering the demand and then the supply restrictions there. Now you remember that having allocated 20 in A1, B2, B2 would only have 10 left. So if we have to make any allocation, we have to consider what B2 is requiring and then how much A2 has to offer. A2 has 60, but B2 has only 10. And so we can only allocate 10 units there. And so we allocate our 10 units there. And you do see that once 10 is allocated, we can no longer make any more allocations in that order. And then the 30 units have also been dealt with. So we don't have, so you do see this time around, column B2 is also out. So we'll now be left with just column B3 and B4. And then we'll be left with A2 and A3. So we just need to continue like that. So once you look at what is left, identify the northwest corner cell. Again, it will be the top left corner cell within what is left. And so in that case, what we were left there, A2 still has 50 to offer and demand for B3 is 50. So we allocate all the 50 there and then in that order. And so you repeat the same process until all allocations are done. Okay, now when we are done, we would want to find the total cost of this allocation. And so you take each cell, how much you have allocated in it, and then you multiply it by the per unit cost. So if you take cell A1, B1, we allocated 20 and the per unit cost there is 4. So the cost there will be 20 times 4. And then if you take A1, B2, we also allocated 20 and the cost there is 6. So you see it goes in that order. In cell A2, B2, we allocated 10 and the cost there is 8. And then in cell A2, B3, we allocated 50 and the cost there is 6. And then the last one was A3, B4 and we allocated 50 and the cost there is 8. So when we find the sum product of this, we have a total of 980 Ghana cedi. Okay, so now let's look at the next technique which you call the least cost method. In fact, the name speaks for itself. It says the least cost method. So the technique, it just says make your allocations based on cost. So it says that look in the entire cell. So we represent our cell like this. Just look in the cell and identify the cell with the least possible cost. So look in all the cells where we have the per unit cost for each, where you have the 6, 4, so from A1 you say 4, 6, 8, 8, 6, 8, 6, 7, 4, 7, 6, 8. Look in all these cells. Identify the one with the least cost. So I think the least cost here is 4. But 4 occurs in A1, B1 and also occurs in A3, B1. Well, I don't think it matters, isn't it? Because either ways, it's still the same. And so just choose arbitrarily any of them. So because 4 is the least cost and it occurs in 2 cells, just pick any of them. Okay, so we can pick A1, B1, or we can pick A3, B1, any, because it's the same cost. If I should move from A1 to B1, it will cost me 4 CD. And if I should also move from A3 to B1, it will cost me 4 CD. That is what that point is making. So pick any of these cells arbitrarily and then allocate as much as possible, but making sure you consider the demand and then the supply restrictions there. And so if we are picking A1, B1, then you should remember that A1 is willing to offer 40, but B1 is willing to take 20, and so we can only allocate as much as 20. So once we allocate 20 in A1, B1, you do see that the demand for B1 has been exhausted, so that column is out. Now, so it's like the whole of column 1 is out. So starting from column B2 to B3, all the cells in there now, look out for the cell with the least cost and then allocate as much as possible in that order. So you just keep repeating. Again, the least cost is 6 and it occurs in A1, B2. It also occurs in B2, B3, and also occurs in A3, B3. So, you know, you could also pick arbitrarily and then do the same. So you keep repeating this process, looking for the least cost, the least cost, the least cost, until all allocations have been made. You notice that by the time you are done, you would have allocated a total of 150. If you sum all the allocations in there, you notice it. Okay, and then when you are done, just like we did before, we found the total cost of each allocation. Take where the cell in which you made an allocation, multiply it by the unit cost of that cell. So 20 by 4, 20 by 6, 50 by 6, 10 by 7, 10 by 7 again, and then 40 by 8. And we sum all these, and whatever this gives us, here in our case, we had 960 Ghana cedi. So that is the total cost for this allocation. Okay, so there's one other concept we want to look at for the issue of generosity, where you want to see that the total number of allocations must be equal to the number of rows plus the number of columns. But what we treated that one in depth in the handout, so you can just look at it and read it and understand whether your allocations are degenerate or your solution is degenerate or not. Okay, but normally we say just do m plus n minus 1 should be equal to the number of allocations. So here, if we made some allocations, we made 6 allocations, then how many rows do we have? We have 1, 2, 3 rows, and we also have 1, 2, 3, 4. So you have 3 plus 4 minus 1 will be equal to 6, and that 6 is exactly equal to the number of allocations we have made. And so our solution is not degenerate, it is just fine. Okay, so I hope this introduction or finding our basic feasible solution made sense, and we can all practice it. Just take just draw any matrix, put in some values, make sure that your demand and your total demand and your total supply are the same, and just try and go through this iteration and see how. You see, it's fun, it's that easy. See, for the northwest corner method, look out for the northwest corner cell, which is always the top left corner cell. Allocate as much as possible, making sure that demand and supply restrictions or requirements are met. If the demand is exhausted or supply is exhausted at one point, cross out the row or column whose demand or supply has been exhausted, and then look out for the cells that are available again for the next round of iterations. Identify your northwest corner cell and do it, and then you continue until all allocations are done. For the least cost method, start by looking through the entire cell, the entire table. Look out for the cell with the least cost. Allocate as much as possible considering your demand and supply requirements. Okay, where demand is exhausted or supply is exhausted, cross out the column or row, and then again, ignoring that row or column that probably has been crossed out, look out again for the cell with the least cost and allocate as much as possible. Now, if you have any cell or more than one cell that has the same least cost, just choose arbitrarily which of them, and I'm pretty sure you'll be fine. Okay, so I hope you understood this lesson, and I'll see you in the next session. Thank you.